My name is Ellen, and we have several of our members here that are working on this presentation. Diane, who's the project leader for this. Joe. Jen. Here's Sandy Krasinski, Marcia's involved. Who else do we have? There's Gary. Here's Mary. Mary's over there. We have a lot of people involved with working on this. We have some people from land use.
So now somebody can talk about recycling rules later.
From JJC. And so we have a nice group of people here. And just briefly, I just wanted to mention a little bit about our organization. Citizens Against Burning the Environment is a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization that started in 1995. We began as we were protesting a potential incinerator that was planned to be built across from the old Texaco facility. And we were like, this is not going to be a good thing for the community. So we went on, a bunch of neighbors got together and people, and that's how we started. After we defeated the incinerator, we moved along to a couple other projects like Texaco, which had been sitting there since '81, just rusting away, and contaminated soil and water. At first they thought that when we said we wanted them to clean that up, they thought they should just paint over the sign that said Texaco. So they came out and they painted over the word Texaco. And we were like, excuse me, we're thinking more about cleaning up the groundwater here. There's a problem with that. So that was one of our projects. And then of course, from our windows, many of us can see the coal-fired power plants there, and we learned how bad the pollution was from the coal-fired power plants, and there weren't any pollution controls or very minimal controls on the plant. So since '95, we've been working to get that cleaned up. Since then, other organizations joined in. We're just a small little piece of sand compared to the bigger organizations. But teamwork together with groups like Sierra Club, Environmental Law Policy, Greenpeace,
NRCC,
yeah,
this goes on and on.
Earth Justice. Everybody started teaming up, and with those efforts, we were able to shut down the Fiskins Crawford facilities in Chicago. The two Joliet facilities have been converted into gas, and the 4 stacks that are in Romeoville, they call it Will County. 3 of the 4 stacks are shut down completely, I believe, and the one is still running. We thought we had that shut down with the change in the legislation. That one's not shut down completely, so they're only using it for emergencies. So we went on from that to many projects. We have a long list of things that we've worked on. We try to work with other groups, and a couple of years ago, we started working on trying to reduce plastic bag consumption, and then we thought, let's see about shutting down plastic bags in our area. Then we said, okay, do we do that by neighborhoods? Do we do it by businesses? Do we do it by state? How do you do this? And it was like unbelievable, the amount of information that's out there. We started trying to get petitions signed, and we started asking people, what should we do? Which direction should we take on this? We realized that it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to eliminate the plastic bags. That's still one of our goals. But what we know we can do is reduce our consumption of plastic pieces. And that's what brought this about. So this is probably what, our 3rd year working on this. So we decided to do this presentation, and then I'll just kind of turn this over to Diane, since she's our project leader on this.
Thank you, Ellen. I'll just mention, I hooked up with CARE when I was in graduate school. The attorney that CARE has, Keith Harley, is the professor that I had for 2 of my classes at IIT, and I enjoyed the work so much, our project work with CARE, that I ended up continuing, and I love what I do, and I love being here doing this kind of thing. So If anybody has any questions or thoughts, comments, whatever, please just throw them out there anytime during the presentation. We do have a few spots where we put in some breaks, but we can do that at other times. You know, get up, stretch your legs, whatever. We're trying to make this very informal. I think the first thing we'll do, what seems to work best for this whole problem with plastic, is just starting out with a video clip that, in fact, Joe was the one who found it. It was from CBS Sunday morning show. It goes all the way back to last August. And they did a really nice summary about the problems that plastic is causing around the world. I'm sure that everybody's probably read about it by this time and seen it on the news. Actually, it was new to me when I started working on this with CARE, and it's been quite an experience, quite an education, I can say personally for myself. So we're hoping that you'll learn some new stuff here today. So first thing I'll do is go ahead and play the video.
Cover story is from Yahoo.com.
We were testing it, and let me set it back to the beginning.
On this David Bowie.
In the 1950s, a new material burst onto the scene that would change the world forever.
The ingenious alchemy of coal and oil provides the material. Ingenious machinery presses and stamps and molds the material into a wide variety of products.
Yes, it was plastic. Cheap, durable, sanitary, strong, and light.
So how many raw categories of plastics are there?
Well, literally thousands.
Fred Betke is the founder of Delta Pacific Products, which makes plastic parts for medical instruments.
Okay, welcome to the factory.
Thank you. We're all ready to serve cafeteria lunches now.
That's right.
Almost everything in plastic starts out as pellets. They come in every color under the sun, which is why Betke keeps them carefully in separate boxes.
So will you pay me not to dump some of this?
Please don't do that.
Delta Pacific's clients specify the exact design of the parts they want. Here, hot plastic gets injected into this heavy steel mold. Later, it comes out as something like this. After 65 years of making plastic, we've pretty much mastered the art. What we haven't yet figured out is what to do with plastic once we're done with it.
It lasts a really long time. It doesn't biodegrade, so it just sits there.
Roland Geyer, professor of environmental science at UC Santa Barbara, has studied how much plastic we throw away.
We have statistics reaching all the way back to the dawn of plastic mass production, 1950. And if we add it all together, it's 8.3 billion metric tons. So if we take that and spread it out evenly over California, the entire state of California would be covered. And that would be an understatement.
About 70% of our discarded plastic winds up in open dumps or landfills like this one.
So, plastic bag, probably used once between the cash register and the car, and then how long will it be here in the landfill?
It will be with us for hundreds of years.
But some plastic winds up in an even worse place, the ocean.
Every single year, somewhere between 5 and 12 million metric tons of plastic waste enters the ocean. Plastic in the ocean has a tendency to break down into ever smaller pieces, and these tiny pieces then get taken up even lower down in the food chain. So we know that it ends up on our dinner plates.
There's plastic in my food?
There is plastic in your food, plastic in your sea salt, and there is plastic coming out of your tap.
In fact, at this rate, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2050, our oceans will contain more plastic than fish. But wait a minute. Don't most people recycle plastic? Not exactly. Geyer says that as of 2017, the world recycles only about 9% of all our plastic. Even if you're good about using your recycling bin, your plastic may never actually get recycled. Its first stop is a material recovery facility where metal, glass, paper, and plastic get sorted.
We sort everything, so we will sort anger, we will sort plastic film, we will sort soda bottle, pill bottle, and make individual bales of each plastic.
Ah, okay.
Sunil Bagaria is the co-founder of GGB International, a corporate recycling facility in New Jersey.
Then it is going to another factory, which is the washing it, grinding it, pelletizing it. Then
and from there it will go to another company which will make another product or maybe grow another model.
It's easy and economical to recycle clean, pure plastic. But well over half the plastic we throw in our bins is contaminated by food or paper labels or other materials. For 30 years, we've had an easy solution for disposing of that dirty plastic. And what is the role of China in all this?
That is the $1 million question. China was buying 50% of all plastic scrap in the world. That continued for say 70%. And then there was I think a movie made by somebody.
Plastic China.
Plastic China.
The 2017 documentary Plastic China illustrated the brutal truth about the contaminated plastic that developed nations were selling to China. It shows a desperately poor Chinese family eking out a living by hand sorting these mountains of plastic trash.
The Chinese government, the Communist Party is waking up and saying, why are we doing this?
There's some national pride. We
Yes.
want to be the world's dumping ground.
Yes.
So the Chinese government announced a new policy. Starting on January 1st this year, China stopped accepting other countries' plastic unless it's impossibly pure.
If you are sending any scrap, it should not have more than 0.5% of foreign matter.
It's got to be at least 99.5%
pure plastic.
Yeah.
And then that was obviously unattainable.
In his plant, Bulgaria showed me why.
So right here we have like 4 or 5 different types of plastic.
A lot of plastic comes to recyclers like Bulgaria all mixed together, impossible to separate cost effectively. So what happens now to the plastic we used to ship to China? Not much. A lot of it's just piling up here in the States.
We still have large volumes of the types of plastic that nobody will buy, sitting, waiting for somebody to buy them.
Clay Warner is the recycling manager at Garden Services in Salem, Oregon.
And then you have to decide how long you're going to hold on to it before you end up throwing it away.
The town had to ask the public to stop putting certain plastic types into their recycling bins.
First initial reaction from the public was outrage. What do you mean we can't recycle these plastics?
Meanwhile, smaller recycling centers are simply going out of business.
If you were selling it to China, there was some revenue coming. Now you are sending it to landfill costs money. So not only now you are not earning, now you are paying to get rid of it.
Still, Roland Geyer points out that we have overcome environmental nightmares before.
We banned leaded gasoline. We managed to tackle ozone depletion. So I think humankind has a long history of creating big environmental problems, but I think we're also starting to have a track record of solving environmental problems.
Some larger facilities, like Sunil Bagaria's, have decided to process the contaminated plastic themselves.
Earlier we were making money by selling it to China. Now we are making more money by keeping this here, sorting it and making plastic pellets out of it. This China problem is a blessing in disguise.
In the big picture, though, it will take effort from every stakeholder to fix the plastics problem. Recycler Clay Warner says that government should play a part.
I do think, in my own opinion, that we do need to ban certain plastics and packaging.
Sunil Bagaria says that corporations play a part.
Like McDonald's, they have announced that by 2025, all our packaging will be made from recycled plastic.
And plastic parts maker Fred Becky says that plastic manufacturers themselves play a part.
Yes, the industry is trying to address it. Polymers are being developed that, the knives and spoons and forks that we see at some of the fast foods, they've gone to those polymers, which are biodegradable. It has to happen. I mean, this is all we've got, right? So
Yeah, that's right.
We cannot imagine life without plastics, but we cannot continue to lead our life the way we are. It's not like, oh, let's use this planet Earth, then we will move to another planet. This is what we have. We need to take care of this.
Does everybody feel crummy? I didn't when I first saw this. I had no idea. I had no idea that we were sending waste, so-called recycled stuff, overseas. you know, I consider myself a person that keeps up with the news, but I had no idea that any of this was going on. How many people here how many people here knew that, but how, like the average person knew that we were sending stuff?
And can we just make a little comment about
Sure.
that specifically? There was a good reason for that. I mean, it was efficient because we buy all this stuff from China, and then these ships go back to China, so we would load them up with our recycling. It's not only about recycling, it's about Americans want all cheap goods. So this was going back and forth, our plastic was going back there, you know. So I always try to say, are you willing to pay a little bit more for that plastic crap you buy at Walmart or anywhere else? Because it's not just Walmart, it's
Yeah,
most,
dollar store.
most stores, all of us, you know. So
Globalization, it's probably one of, not probably, is one of the effects of globalization.
we want all this stuff, you know.
And could I add to that, that China is a huge economy. Their GDP is actually larger than ours as far as that goes. And as they've been growing and becoming this economic powerhouse, they're not only still considered a third world country because parts of China are operating like you saw in the movie, where people are eking out living on landfills, living on dump sites. But you also have cities that are just like ours, that have actual real solid waste management going on. And so you've got the dichotomy in China. They were valid markets and still are valid markets for a lot of our materials. And they do get recycled properly in some areas, improperly in other areas.
Yeah, well, thank you for that comment. And yeah, we're going to see a chart just in a few minutes when we become familiar with the term mismanaged plastic waste. Just right now, though, quickly, I know one of the first questions I asked myself after I watched this video was, how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we were using so much plastic? How did this happen without my even realizing it? I just took it for granted. So we're just going to cover that real quickly, just so you have an idea where it started from. Basically, it was World War II. Research and development had been going on with plastics prior to World War II, especially between the time of World War I and World War II, because World War I was a war that was won because of petroleum. Petroleum was able to be extracted much more easily, and that's what won the war for the Allied forces. Okay, so a short time later, World War II pops up. And because of it, even at that time being a global economy, the problems in the world, what affected everything was the trade. They couldn't get access to natural materials, raw material products that they needed for manufacturing. The synthetic rubber industry was born because of World War II. They couldn't get the rubber from the rubber plantations like in India or whatever, because that was all blocked because of the conflict going on. So because of this, they had to figure out what they were going to do to be able to fight a battle, and that's when the synthetic plastic industry took off. That is considered the birth of the industrialization of plastic. Before you had small amounts, people goofing around with things in their labs. Now you have it scaled up for military use. So if anybody asks you, you just say it was World War II. How did they handle it? They ended up building a lot of large petrochemical plants. Quite a few of the ones we have in the United States that were built during the early 40s. I've been to a couple of them because I'm a chemical engineer, and believe me, they're very ancient. But it was because of the war effort. So keep in mind that we have these giant petrochemical plants that were built to make these products for the military, for the war effort. And now the war is over. And, oh, I'm sorry, that was supposed to say something else, the subtitle. Okay, I made a mistake on the subtitle there. The war is over, and what are you going to do with these plants? They're big. They're not going to let them sit idle. They have to do something with them. Well, lo and behold, because of the Great Depression and because of the rationing during World War II, you see this little boy with his ration card, people had been deprived of a lot of things for a long time, and they probably got sick of it. We would. We don't have any idea what that feels like because none of us were, around at that time. But this created a great consumer market, and so what they decided to do was they were going to convert, having these plants, instead of making military stuff, they were going to make stuff for consumers. And Americans were ready to do that buying of new consumer products, and they were ready, like I said, they were ready for it, and they were willing to spend the money, and it took off. So that's kind of, I think, World War II. How are we going to use these plants? And people are feeling kind of deprived, and we want to buy new stuff. And that is what catapulted us to where we are today. A lot of new products were made, and the key thing that they did during that time was that they started replacing traditional materials and consumer products with plastics. So not only did they did it during World War II for the military, because they were forced into it, in the consumer market, they made that choice, the manufacturers. So wood with wood, metal, glass, all kinds of things. And I know that you can think of a lot of products right off the top of your head that have plastic in them. I mean, plexiglass that was used for the windshields of the airplanes during World War II. And I didn't know that until I looked it up, but that's a common material today. Okay. The one thing that they were kind of worried about, manufacturers were making these decisions about replacing these materials, but the one thing they were worried about is would people accept it? It was a totally new material. Nothing like that had ever been seen before by consumers. They probably weren't fully aware of what was going on with the military and how they were using it. So in order to make sure that these decisions they were making about switching over the plants to making these consumer products, make sure that consumers would accept that, there was a lot of very strong marketing and advertising that went on. And it was during the 1950s, as you see from the picture here, that the Tupperware party was born. I didn't know it went back that far. I'm sure that probably every woman in this room has been to a Tupperware party, but it does go back that far. And that kind of marketing is an example of, I would almost use the word aggressive. That's the way it's been described. They were bound and determined, the Society of the Plastic Industry was bound and determined to make the stuff work. And consumers accepted it. And we did. When I just found this picture online, and I thought, well, I don't know, I guess it kind of looks like the shelves at Target, places that I go to today. And this is where we are. This is basically how we got here. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions about that? It's, as I said,
Hey, I had a job as an engineer at a petrochemical plant. And if you'll notice that petrochemical plants are along pipelines to the gas lines. And that's a byproduct. They extract out of the gas what they need and put the rest of the gas in that we burn.
Okay.
And it's a very simple operation and very efficient.
I'm glad you bring that up because the next couple of slides we're going to be, that's one of the things we got to remember. There are a lot of reasons why we use plastic, and we're going to see that in a couple of slides. Anybody else? So like I said, World War II, the plants and consumers went for it, and here we are. What's your name?
Don.
Don. I'm going on Don's comment. We just kind of stuck this in. The fracking industry is what's supporting a good part of the U.S. plastics manufacturing. These domestic supplies, because of the technology that pretty much came on the scene, I think around 2005 or so, with the new equipment and the new ways of doing it, is opened up these huge shale deposits. And I think we've all probably heard the term fracking. And it has been a boondoggle for the U.S., not only the chemicals industry, but the plastics industry. And we'll leave it at that. There's a lot of controversy with the fracking. And unfortunately, our presentation today is not about fracking, but we can always do another one on that. But just so people know, I didn't know that. And I'll just leave you with one question. If we didn't discover this, if we didn't have this technology and we didn't have these domestic supplies, would we be making as many plastics as we are today? If we had to depend on getting more of the oil from overseas. So I don't know. That's just something we were kind of thinking about. Okay, a couple of charts here. This one harks back to what Roland Geyer said, the guy that at the beginning, at the end of the video clip, the one that has a German accent. He's an industrial ecologist, and this is the kind of work that industrial ecologists do. He mentioned 8.3 billion tons, that's metric tons. If you convert that to US tons, it actually is 8.6 billion tons of plastic that they think has been made from the 1950s up to, this data goes up to 2015, I think it is. And of course, it doesn't count the plastic that we've made since then. So you might say to yourself, well, why are you showing this chart with this big hill? Okay, first you can see the rapid increase. This is massive. The rate at which the plastic was produced exceeds a lot of other materials that this country made during that time, like steel and I imagine glass. I know for sure steel. So that speed at which they did it was really almost quite shocking, and you can see that from this chart. And then when you add all of it together, you get that amount. Now, why add it all together? Because it's still with us. And that's the point we want to make with this chart. And he said that in the video, but it doesn't degrade, it's still with us in some form. I suppose you could say that some of it that's been incinerated, which it has been, is in the form of ashes, so maybe you can subtract that little amount, but most of it in its either original form or degraded plastic form is still with it. So that number is extremely important to take note of. Imagine trying to pile that up, and I think he said that in the clip. It covers the state of California or something like that. Okay, consumption by person. What does this chart tell us? We didn't put any numbers on here, the tops of the bars, but hopefully, it's kind of easy to see that your developed nations, so-called developed nations, are the ones that are consuming more plastics per person than your less developed economies. This has nothing to do with the total amount. People might say, oh, but wait a minute, isn't this based on population? No, this kind of data has been adjusted for the population. We're looking at per person, and you can see that the NAFTA countries, which I'm counting as United States and Canada, I'm not counting Mexico in that. Then Western Europe, which has a similar economy to us, and then Japan, which has been a powerhouse since World War II. Here we are. And then we have the other regions of the world where the consumption is quite a bit less. We'll leave you with that. Why is it like that? That's something that we all ask ourselves. But that is the data that's been collected. Okay. Oh, before, I shouldn't have showed this. Everybody remember what they said in the video clip about the recycling rate? I'm going to argue with that a little bit.
Is that 9%? 9%.
Now, this pie chart is related. This is worldwide. It's the same in the United States. We're going to see that in a couple of minutes. And the way we're looking at it too is, people say, well, that's the amount that was recycled. No, that was the amount that was collected for recycling, and that's what we have throughout this presentation. Not all of that material was actually made into another product, the way that we're thinking about it. First of all, 9% is, I don't know, kind of a crummy number. Look how much is ended up in landfills or just being littered or dumping. 9%. And of that 9%, there isn't any data for the U.S. that we've been able to find so far, but figure out of that 9%, how much was actually used for a new product? I don't know, 2-3% maybe? And the rest of it is going to a landfill. So we're not doing a really good job of this, the whole world. Yes?
But what's the effect of the incinerated? What does that turn into?
Well, that's like burning anything, whether it's plastics or any other kind of garbage. It's just burnt down into an ash, and The argument for that is that it reduces the bulk of the waste, of any waste, and especially plastic, since it has a lot of volume, and then, but you have to haul that ash off and put it in a landfill. So at some point, you're still having a landfill, something. Not to mention the emissions and the particular emissions.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, like what PM2 and what emissions are released for incineration of plastic. I mean, it sounds kind of like a railroad tie.
Yeah, you know, I don't have the detail on that. That's a really good question. But what Mary is referring to is what the EPA does is they keep track of two different types of particles. One they call PM10, particulate matter, and PM2.5. And the 10 and the 2.5 are just units for numbers. The 10, you can kind of see more. It's kind of bigger and easier to capture. The 2.5 is very small. That is the stuff that we breathe in and gets trapped in our lungs. Whether it's a coal-fired power plant, you're burning plastics, you're burning garbage, it doesn't matter. So the two concerns with the incinerator is the ash coming off, and you have to dispose of the waste. Is there pollution control equipment? Yes, there is. There are strict regulations. Does it work? That's a big argument, big controversy. I know Joe has a really good story about that here. Suffice it to say that in this country, they are regulated under the Clean Air Act very strictly, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it works and everything. So
I got another one. Figure. So the ash then, what do they do with it? They put it in a landfill, like a lined landfill? So that would be considered hazardous waste as well, correct?
yeah, well, look what's happening now with the Lincoln Stone Quarry.
Right.
With the, well, that's a residue of coal-fired power plant. Now, but it is still, the process is similar.
Okay.
And that's got, you know, toxic stuff in it. It's got heavy
that's
metals.
online.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why you guys are arguing about that, because it's not being handled right. And I believe also the argument goes back to that the EPA does not consider coal ash a hazardous material. If it was considered a hazardous material, the regulations regarding its disposal would be quite a bit different. And that's why, you know, the energy companies are, you know, saying, well, it's not hazardous material, so we can dump it anywhere.
With their silver tongues?
For the purposes of this discussion, I know the incineration is now seeming to be popping up because of the amount of plastic waste we have. It seems like businesses, I don't know, are coming up with this idea that we can burn it for energy, which is what a lot of the incinerators do, because there's a lot of heat given off. You know, you're burning something and you can capture that heat in a way and use it to either generate electricity or even send it out for heating homes and businesses. So something is telling me with reading a lot of the stuff, especially in the last couple of weeks, that I don't know, maybe we're going to end up doing a presentation on that, because that's very serious. That is no small matter. If people are thinking that this is a way to get out of this crisis, I'm sure that every member of CARE would tell you no. Okay. Plastic waste generation per person. This is kind of an odd chart. I was surprised when I saw this. Once again, for this data, there were 186 countries that were surveyed. Okay, and were calculated. This again goes back to Roland Geyer. This is all part of the work that he and his team did. You can still see, again, look at us. We're not as bad as, you know, Kuwait or some of these other countries, but, you know, we're still up there. I can offer no reason for why these other countries are so high. Perhaps some of it has to do with tourism. I'm sure a lot of the places have to import a lot of goods, and maybe it has something to do with that. There was no explanation given for this. The point of this chart is just to show that, you know, the average person in the U.S., what they're saying right now uses about 3/4 of a pound, or generates about 3/4 of a pound of plastic waste a day. Now, you might say, well, 3/4 of a pound, it doesn't seem like that much. But given how light plastic is, how much plastic would you have to accumulate to even just get 3/4 of a pound. So think about it in terms of volume. That is a lot. And again, the last few countries here, you know, and surprisingly India, you can barely see them on the chart. So once again, you know, this is where we're at. And this is just to kind of make everybody aware of our consumption, like Joan was pointing out. Okay. You know, when we started, like when I was talking about, started talking about, you know, how you get rid of plastic bags and reducing consumption of plastic, it inevitably led to a discussion of, oh my gosh, how much plastic we're using, and, you know, what about this? What about that? We use it here, we use it there. We can't, you know, change to something else. There are a lot of cases where we can't. So this slide is just telling us that there are benefits, but there are also costs. And this is the challenge that's facing us. It's a very durable material, but we make a lot of it, but then it presents problems for our waste stream. It's just an acknowledgement of the challenge that we're facing. And we don't want people attending the presentation to go away with the impression that CARE doesn't understand that. We do. We do. We understand the challenge that's facing society, and we're just trying to acknowledge it. Okay, very quickly, the efficient process with manufacturing, it's right up there. They say it's cheap to make compared to other materials. You know, easy to make. We all know it's lightweight. How much of it is used in medicine? You know, aseptic type things. Protection, safety. These are all very key qualities. When you look at something like this, it kind of gives you the feeling, I know it did me, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, what other material can we find that can meet all of these properties? Certainly some materials do. You know, glass has advantages. We're not saying that other materials don't have advantages, but when you look at these kind of advantages, again, this is the challenge that we're facing. Okay, just some areas that we know that we use it. We use it in medicine. It's critical, or it's essential. It really is critical to medicine. Modern medicine would be nowhere without plastics. I'm not sure how many of us would want to show up at the ER and they say, well, we have to put an IV in, and you say, well, I don't want the plastic tubing. You know, what's the alternative? Yeah, it's
or like syringes.
And one of the things, you know, looking at some of the industry websites that make plastics for medical applications, and basically said, you know what, it's made healthcare a lot less painful, and things that are possible today. And we all know that were not possible not that long ago. So that's medicine. What about food? How many of us have bought this with the, you know, the fruit and everything? I do this all the time. But you know, maybe this is a little more addressable, this kind of challenge. But nonetheless, the advantage of plastic here is that it does cut food waste. It gives people access to food that might not have access at all, or gives you access over greater times of the year. I mean, I can buy a piece of watermelon in February. It may not taste that great, but I can buy it because it's been shipped quickly, wrapped in plastic. This one might be something, again, that we can do a little bit about, but medicine is kind of tough. What about housing? Plastics have probably contributed to keeping housing affordable for a lot of people, not to mention that they really depend on them for energy efficiency. The windows, sealants, your siding, durability, you know, exposure to the elements. That one's going to be a tough one to overcome. And then the auto industry. This is a biggie. Our fuel standards that have been put into place by the federal government, where they have to keep getting more gas mileage, the CAFE standards, that is only possible because of plastics. So you have to reduce the weight of the car or the truck or whatever to make the fuel efficiency go up. And in order to do that, plastics are the way to go. And the auto industry has been doing this for actually decades. We started, you know, incorporating this stuff. How, I don't know of any other way they could do it. So just some examples, some sectors of the economy where, again, this is what we're facing. What do we do? Okay, plastic pollution vocabulary. I think maybe we'll take a break in a few minutes because we have been sitting for a bit. That's what it's all about. It's all about the pollution and the plastic waste. You saw that in the video clip. You saw them standing in the landfill. I'm not sure that I would care to visit a landfill. It's nice to look at pictures, but seeing two guys actually standing there with a lot of the plastic bags, we could see that very easily, including the one he was holding. You know, it's a big problem. So it's all about plastic waste and plastic pollution. There are some terms that we'd like you to get familiar with because it's going to kind of help explain what's going on, some of the things that they cover in the video clip. Okay, we like to look at managed waste and mismanaged waste. Those are two key terms. If you look at plastic waste, if you can kind of look at it in those two categories, whether it's managed or mismanaged, that's the most important thing. Managed waste tends to be in your developed economies that have waste management infrastructure. And so your high income economies, if you want to call it that. And this is not meant to be a snobbish slide or anything like that. This is the way it is. As economies progress, they should be looking at managing their waste. Now, in the United States, it took us 100 years after the Industrial Revolution to even just create the EPA. So I like to think of it, I like to think that other countries that don't have this stuff are dragging on it, that they could use the U.S. as an example. We've already been through this, and it's critical that countries have some kind of environmental regulatory body. If you don't, then you end up with a lot of mismanaged waste. They know from data that mismanaged waste is more prevalent in your middle and lower income countries. And part of the problem, and Joan got to it already earlier, is that the economies are developing rapidly. They have big markets. They want to use the things that we do, but they're really lagging on their waste management infrastructure. Why are we bringing this up? We've all seen lots of pictures of the waste in the ocean, animals with plastic, wrapped around, and animals that, I'm not sure, where the animal's at, but I start to have the sense that it's not native to the U.S., so a lot of animals that are out in the oceans that may be out in other areas, that is your mismanaged waste, and it's generally occurring in areas that tend to be your middle and lower income countries. Their consumption their waste management infrastructure has to catch up with their consumption. So we're mentioning it, kind of keep that in mind. Some of this is on us, but some of it is on the other countries too. We're only saying that there are things that can be done in other countries. We cannot sit here and take the entire blame for it. The blame can be spread around, so just kind of keep that in mind. I want you to keep remembering mismanaged waste, because that is the key here.
Diane, Virgil has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, on the last slide, I think where you have countries, I think you could substitute communities into that. So high-income communities have managed waste. Low-income communities do not have managed waste.
Mm-hmm.
They're dumping their garbage out in a vacant lot. They've got people that are living in vacant lots and so on and so forth. So.
Yeah, and notice that's a good point, Bert. I'm glad you brought that up. On the high-income countries, it says that mismanaged waste the rate of that is low. Doesn't say it's non-existent. It's just low. It does occur. We're going to see that. I apologize for the presentation. I deleted some of these slides yesterday, and I don't know what happened with my computer. Sorry about this. It's like it's a different copy.
Can I add something to
Sure.
that? It gets really complicated though, because I know where you're going with that, Virgil, with the low-income communities, but they don't buy as much as the rich communities either. The rich communities buy more things, have more conveniences, throw more stuff away. They might have managed waste, where some little areas don't have managed waste, but poor areas also get dumped on. We know that with tires. We've seen that, and the tires come from another state, or they leave a semi-truckload of just the trailer filled with tires in a bin or poor neighborhood.
Yeah,
you know?
and now you're getting into environmental justice issues. We don't have the political clout that richer communities have. Let's be honest.
Like a lot of our cruise ships go to the Dominican Republic or Haiti and say, we'll pay you to dump our waste here. I know they did for the longest time, and of course, if they have no economy, they're going to take that stuff and make money, but then where does it go ultimately if they don't have managed waste?
Right.
You know, that's what's getting into the oceans in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's a complex, it's very complex, it really is, but, you know, I felt like after doing a lot of this research, you know, it's not something where, oh, it's your fault, it's, you know, it's that fault or whatever. It's a problem the whole world has to face, and we're all part of it. I think the important thing is knowing what we can do personally in our lives to even try to make a dent in it. So like what Joan was mentioning, next time you go to Target or Costco or wherever, think about what you're buying, and you know, maybe some of this will stick with you. Okay.
Diane?
Yes.
Diane, there's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my
To the right.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. I have a bad camera.
You know, I saw an article on the table there where Pritzker's putting the 7-cent cost on a plastic bag. And I think we ought to look at the poor and the rich here. The rich will pay 7 cents. The poor will take and bring their own bag.
We hope that, yeah.
This is in,
Well,
you know, we've got to put things in perspective. That
we're
it
gonna-
didn't solve the problem. All it did is pointed out the fact that the poor people and the rich people think differently
yeah.
because
really
they don't
good
have as
point.
much money.
Now, Jen is going to be discussing that near the end of the presentation, and we're not talking about 7 cents. She has worked on a proposal for quite a while now for the city of Joliet. And I'm not going to say anything. We'll wait till Jen, because it might. This is interesting because it might. I'd be curious to see what you think. You know, when she's presenting that. I can always tell you that it's not 7 cents. The proposal is not. Okay. Okay. We're going to be talking about again, just some detail about managed plastic waste and mismanaged plastic waste. You know, this is not a test. You know, quizzing you like what makes up managed plastic waste or mismanaged. We kind of want to have you have a feeling for what it consists of. You know, no tests on the details or, you know, these things. It's just information that's up here. So generally, managed plastic waste, like you'll find it in the United States or in Europe, and it depends on where you're at because it depends on what resources you have in your country. But it's generally either you're doing, for plastic waste, a sanitary landfill. We're not talking about hazardous chemicals or anything. We're talking about plastic waste. It's either going to go to a landfill. We're going to make an attempt to recycle it, and that's what a material recovery facility is for, or some of it is going to be incinerated. We do some incineration of plastic waste in this country. I was quite surprised to find that out, but the EPA has that data. Europe, Germany, some other countries do a lot more than we do because they don't have the space. We have more space for landfills. If we didn't have the space, maybe we would be burning more of it too. But those 3 things, so that's always what managed waste is, one of the three methods. Mismanaged waste is kind of like 4 different categories. You can have, in some countries, have open landfills. So they have a landfill site, the idea is there, the intent is there, but it's not regulated. Our landfills are regulated, I meant to mention that. We have the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act of 1976. And both municipal landfills and hazardous waste landfills are regulated under that. This is not a free-for-all in this country. It may seem like it sometimes, but it's not. There are regulations, and people who don't follow the regulations have to answer to it for the EPA. So just leaving you that with that knowledge that, at least in this country, and Western Europe is the same way, there are at least processes in place for regulation. You can have open dumping. Now, what's the difference between open dumping and littering? I kind of think of it in terms of volume. Open dumping is just lots of waste that you might see in streets. You might see piles of it outside houses. Again, more like your lower income countries. And why? Because they don't have waste collection services. I don't know, maybe we would be doing the same thing. I think they had city dumps years ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, every city had one.
Oh, I can't even process that.
Oh, yeah. Up until the 70s.
Yeah,
It was only through railroad, they got landfill regulations.
Yeah.
So, right, so up until 76, every city had a dump.
That's amazing, isn't it?
My first house on 1100 Washington Street, I would dig down and I'd find metal and glass, and I looked it up, and it was the site of an old city,
The house was built on that?
But it was probably from the early 1900s.
Okay.
But I mean, actually, there was no every time I'd find something, it was either a metal or glass, or tin.
That's interesting. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Not plastic. Well,
No, it was before plastic.
Yeah.
So to me, it wasn't that bad every time I picked something up when I was gardening. But I thought, this is interesting, and I checked with Lockport, and they said that's about the hill, the top of Washington, where the city dump was.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so luckily we have the regulations. I'm not sure that, it is better, I suppose, to have a regulated landfill, but the point is that we're still throwing stuff away. And then, unfortunately, some, you know what, can we take a break? There's something wrong with this presentation. This is not the current version. Please have notes. Do you mind if everybody want to get off the stretcher?
She's got to go in. Everybody thought I was going to see it. A robocall.
Okay, I straightened it out. I actually had loaded the wrong file. I have so many backups of this presentation, and then, you start getting all mixed up with your names and thinking of new names. And so I think we're on track here. Okay, mismanaged plastic waste, the last two that we just want to mention out of the four. Oh, that's right. Thank you, Sandy. One thing that we discovered, too, when we were trying to put the timeline together, we always ask ourselves, how do we get to this convenience lifestyle? That is really what is at the heart of it. Oddly enough, the other day, I was talking with my mom, and we're very fond of Hershey bars, especially those giant ones that you can buy in the store, And all of a sudden, the other day, I was eating a chunk of it, and I said to my mom, when we used to buy these, they used to be wrapped in foil with a paper label. I'm conscious of this because I did a plastic audit, and I'm going to show you the results in a little bit. And it doesn't come like that anymore. It's just wrapped in a single sheet of plastic, some kind of plastic food wrapping. So, I don't know what the reason for that is.
Oh, yeah, it was foil and it slipped inside the sleeve.
Yeah. So you can separate it and probably recycle both of them, but just an example of plastics. But that doesn't have anything to do with convenience. At the same time that they were pushing the plastics in the 50s, they were also pushing the throwaway lifestyle. That's where it began. And interestingly enough, there was an article in the August 1st issue of 1955 of Life magazine, and I was able to get a copy online for really cheap. And they had a whole article in there about throwaway living, and it's kind of interesting to just look at it. Sandy's going to pass it around.
I'll pass it around. Be sure to look at the
some of the products there.
Yeah, the barbecue grill with the asbestos shell.
Oh, I'm sure it's on the next page. Who does
Well, the
that?
bad is Chesterfield cigarettes.
Oh, yeah, cigarettes.
Yeah,
But turn the page, because that's on
the dog dish.
yeah, with the dog dish, yes.
Yeah, now, these are not plastics, these are metal and paper. Yeah, metal and paper. That's what they began using, those were the materials they used when they pushed this throwaway lifestyle on people. And then I guess somehow from there, we got to the plastics. That was already going, the metal and the paper, aluminum instead of, Jiffy Top or something to make your popcorn instead of making it on a pan on the stove, that kind of thing. So it's kind of, I got a kick out of looking at that, although it did make me feel very good.
As far as the date on plastic, I have a thing that tells when we started with plastic. You always get, on certain birthdays, you get these birthday cards that tell everything that came up on the year you were born.
Oh, yes.
Well, mine says that we started with plastics in 1938.
Yeah, a lot of the research, the research and development, Germany, the United States especially.
So it was kind of subdued for a while.
Yeah, because I think, I got the impression I got was that it was more like in these labs, chemists and things.
Kind of an accident.
Yeah, and then, but when it came time to scale it up, they needed that for the war, and that's why it seems that we're here today. But yeah, things like nylon, polyester, those were all, they were not invented during World War II or for World War II. They had been developed, the materials. But once you develop a material, you have to figure out how to scale it up to, an industrialized process. Just because it works in the lab doesn't mean it's going to work mass manufacturing for airplanes or whatever. So World War II provided that environment for doing that. And then, like I said, we went on to the consumer stuff. So. Okay, mismanaged plastic waste. The other thing is, if they throw things out, some people burn it. That's, as far as I know, illegal in this country, although I do know some people in communities that do burn leaves and everything still, if you're unincorporated.
Some people have burn barrels too, so.
See, yeah,
It's federally illegal to burn garbage anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
By federal law? By federal law, and then states adopt it as well and can enforce it on either level. But as far as a burn barrel, you're allowed to have a burn barrel for your landscape waste.
Okay.
And unincorporated areas are subject to county law. There are county regulations. And then incorporated areas, some still do allow you to burn landscape waste on your yard that's self-generated. But it's usually more restrictive than even the county.
Okay, like where I'm at, I live up in the northern suburbs, and that's completely outlawed where I'm at. So it depends on where you live. And it doesn't matter whether it's plastic waste, garbage, or yard waste. It's the emissions, the particulate matter coming off that Mary was mentioning before. It doesn't matter. I'll tell you one thing I have a beef with, as long as we're on the subject. I have great concerns about those the things on the patio, fire pits that people are burning on. Yeah, I have neighbors on both sides that have them, and when they are burning their fire pits, I have to close the windows because it's coming into the house, and we're inhaling it. So I keep walking around saying to people, hey, isn't that a violation of the Clean Air Act? Because I think it is. But anyways, we're off. So uncontrolled burning refers to, there are countries like India that have incinerators with no regulation. They just burn the stuff in a mass quantity, and some countries, people do burn the plastic waste or their other garbage just for their household. When you get into plastic waste, this is one of the things that the United Nations is very concerned about, is that now burning plastic is going to be releasing a lot of toxic emissions, specifically because of what plastic is made of. It's not, when we're actually I'm the poster child for disposable water bottles, so I apologize for this. I have not changed my ways, but you burn this, you light it on fire. That's serious. just holding in your hand, you know, is okay. And it's a process. I mean, since my yeah, that's an issue the United Nations is worried about, because if you're living in a lower economic country and you don't have waste collection services, you got to get rid of it somehow, and that's what people will do. And now we're talking about very serious health problems for the population, and you know, this stuff can spread to other areas. So very, very serious thing. And then we get to our favorite, littering. Every country has littering. That gets to the point that, was Don, were you the one that said that about when we were talking about just, you know, how it's not, you know, your communities, the income and level and everything, it's not.
Was it Virgil, Diane?
Yeah, oh, maybe it was Virgil. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, the idea that it's just high-income countries got everything under control, no, we don't. Okay, and we all know about littering, and I'm going to take you to the next slide.
Give a hoot, don't pollute. I remember that campaign from the 70s?
Yeah.
Pitch in.
Keep America Beautiful. I found out that that is a corporate-backed organization that goes way back to the 60s.
Did it actually work to cut down on littering?
It did. Again, you get to the marketing and the you know, public. The only thing I will say about that, you know, we did originally, we're discussing some of this a long time ago for these slides. I know we've discussed in our meetings. Be careful about some of the stuff, because I think that's where we began, my personal feeling is where they began to shift responsibility completely onto the consumer and away from the manufacturers. Littering, we're going to call it littering, it's your problem because you're littering this stuff or not managing it, but somehow it's not the problem. It's not Hershey's problem because they stopped putting their candy bars in paper and foil and decided to wrap them in plastic. So this is going to be something you're going to see as we progress through the slides. We're kind of having a lot of discussion about manufacturer responsibility. It's not all just on the consumer. So guess what? This is waste management in the United States. There are 5 different things that we do. 3 of them are to manage. We know that we do have landfills. We do incinerate some of our waste, plastic waste. And everything here is related to plastic. And I'm talking about garbage in general. This data that we have is specifically broken down by plastic because the EPA does provide it to that level. They've been tracking it. And then our so-called recycling, which we're going to get into a little more detail. Joe will talk about that. We do have open dumping. And it gets to some of the communities. And of course, like I said, we have littering. So by no means are we exempt from mismanaged waste. We're probably a lot better off, as is Western Europe and other countries, but we still have our issues, so keep that in mind. Global share of mismanaged plastic waste. There we are, boy, we're way at the bottom. Now that does support the idea of the higher income countries having less mismanaged waste. You know, if you just look at it as an overview, China has more. And again, it does go to the waste management infrastructure, and that's probably really all it shows. It doesn't get into the nuance of, you know, different communities or, you know, cities versus rural areas, that kind of a thing. It just shows that we have far less. And again, I would just say that the point of this slide is because we have more formal waste management infrastructure and we have environmental regulations. This doesn't get us off the hook, though. It's just kind of a comparison. And I think it probably, obviously, China is trying to take steps for itself, for its country, as we saw in the video. But it's quite a variation there, like if you just look at China and the U.S. Not to assign blame, just talk about waste management infrastructure. What is it? Question? Oh,
I have a question.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. So besides just plastic, where does the rest of the garbage go?
Like not including plastic.
Well, the waste management infrastructure really does apply to all materials. You can go on to the EPA website, and their latest data is from 2015, and they produce a report every year. There's a lag in the data because it takes a while to collect it. But if you just, Google EPA waste management or municipal waste, they have a really nice report. They have the charts all broken down by, metals, plastic, total everything, but they do show the percentages of landfilling, what they call recycling, what we're calling collected for recycling, not recycling. I'm not clear that data, they didn't say that data actually reflected recycling material. It's what was collected. That's what I think, and that's what I have put on the slides, because there are two different things, two different issues here. And then, what's the other one? I said landfill, incineration, and the recycling. And they kind of combine composting too, although composting in this case really doesn't apply to plastics, although we'll touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, you can go on their website and you can find just about anything you need to know. It's amazing how they've broken it down, but those are the percentages they'll give you. Yeah, that's where everything goes. Most of it still goes to a landfill. Okay, just to emphasize once again that we do have open dumping. This is an actual photo from Detroit, Michigan, on an outside wooded area. There's a lot of other stuff here. Obviously, a lot of cans and sure some paper things, but there's a lot of plastic bottles, whatever. So we're just saying it does occur. What the reasons are for it, you would have to get into see what's going on in Michigan. We're just saying it is occurring, that we're not exempt from it in this country. And we're not exempt from the littering either. Littering is, I didn't touch on that point. There are actually two types of littering. They categorize as intentional and unintentional littering. And it is important with mismanaged waste. Intentional littering is the person that throws a water bottle out the car window, the one that's driving in front of you, or wherever. I'm sure we've all had experiences with that. And then the term unintentional littering refers to, this is an example of unintentional, where people think they're throwing things away or put in the recycling bin, but it's so overflowing that it has a chance to blow away. Or in this case, this is a beach in Chicago after Memorial Day, 2018. And I don't know why people didn't take their styrofoam containers home. I mean, I have one that's decades old, it's still perfectly fine. But this is what people do. They just toss it, and any of this waste can actually end up going towards the lake. Anything can blow away. So, okay, Virgil, you had a question?
Yeah, basically a comment. Oh, this is a good example right here of the garbage can. That happens all the time.
Unintentional littering.
The people that come and pick that garbage can up and empty it, all that stuff that's laying on the sidewalk and laying around, they don't pick that up.
They just leave it.
And then what happens is you call about that garbage can, and then you call maybe a couple weeks later. A little while, that garbage can's gone. They don't want.
They completely take it away?
Yeah, they'll just take it away and do away with it. I can show you places where garbage cans were there for years and years and years, and now they're all gone. So that's the two problems, is that when they take the garbage can and empty it, they don't pick up the garbage around it, and then they'll just decide, we don't want the aggravation of people calling us because there's a garbage can that's full. We'll just take it away.
Yeah, like that really solves the problem. And it's, now we're getting into politics, and it's so nuanced,
And some of those are the responsibility of waste management. Some of them are the city or county that are.
Yeah, this is the city of Chicago. This is an actual photo.
I shouldn't say county, I don't want to get in trouble.
The Forest Preserve has containers.
But the Forest Preserve is a good example.
Could I have Virgil introduce himself?
Sure.
Because my neighbor just sitting here next to me asked me, who is that man?
Stand up, Virgil, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Virgil from Helpers of Mother Earth, and you just showed the the garbage dump. Yeah. Some of the best days of my life have been working in those and cleaning them up.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
in our group, Helpers of Mother Earth, we've got some people that are with me and just real energetic about going out and finding places where there were dump sites and cleaning them up and then recycling them.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. And hopefully, you know, I look at things like this and I try to think, well, what's the policy solutions behind this? What's the root cause of this? Because I studied sustainability in graduate school, and that's how we were trained. You're getting down to the root cause and how can you make things sustainable in the long run. And it's you know, we need to clean everything up, but what's the reason for doing this to begin with? Is it lack of services in the community that the person came from or people came from, you know, those kind of things. So we kind of need to think longer term here too, which is what we have to do for the plastic waste. But thank you. Go on.
And Maria down here, she's Miss or Mrs. Sustainability.
Oh, good.
And she does all the right things in her personal life that all of us should be doing and so on and so forth. Besides, she's a leader in sustainability at JJC and so on.
Right.
And done a lot with my group and her and her family.
Well, I think there's a lot of interest in it, and the more education we can do about it, because there's certainly lots of things that people learn along the way. I mean, I've learned so much of just researching this subject. It's always, hey, I didn't know that, or hey, how did we get here, that kind of thing. So, yeah, the more information we can share, the better. Okay, let's move on to the beach. Okay, mismanaged plastic waste. I'm sorry to repeat that term over and over again, but that is what we're dealing with from this point on in the presentation. It's the mismanaged plastic waste that is causing the problems we're seeing today. The stuff in the oceans, the stuff on the beach, the piled up garbage cans, they then take away. That's even worse. That's even a worse example of mismanaged plastic waste. Or mismanaged waste to begin with, but again, we're focusing directly on plastic. Why are we so worried about this? Because it's found on land, the oceans, and the freshwater systems. The Great Lakes, they're very, very worried about the Great Lakes. If there's anything you take away from here today too, it's that we have to, the plastic waste. The Great Lakes are being inundated with plastic. We'll have a little bit of data, just a little bit on that. And it is a huge, huge concern. When he talked about people drinking in the video clip, about people drinking plastic in their tap water, that's where it's coming from. Because your tap water in our area, if you're on Lake Michigan water, the community I'm in is on Lake Michigan water, a lot of that stuff can't be filtered out by the wastewater treatment plants, and so that's what they mean when we're ingesting this stuff. I just read online again last night, somebody had mentioned they detected it in beer, a batch of beer or batches of beer that were made with water from Lake Michigan. So this is very serious, and you know, this is something we all have to think about. It's just not something that is great to think about if you're pouring yourself a glass of water. So I guess that's where we go for this. Anyways, so the three entities, the land, the ocean environments, and then freshwater, and specifically in our case, the Great Lakes. And we're worried about it because we have to, the implications are for fish, wildlife, and particularly humans.
Are there any new regulations or legislation coming about for adult diapers and children's diapers? Because they're starting to constitute a lot of the landfill waste.
Okay.
They're not disposed of separately. When you look at the overflowing garbage cans, etc., bathrooms are also in great decline because the liability insurance for gas stations, etc., is usually much higher if they have a public washroom.
Okay.
So public washrooms are collapsing, and people are traveling more with the adult diaper and the children's diaper, longer and more of them. As the baby boomer ages, you know, that group is all going to start to go into nursing homes, etc., where there's horrendous amounts of plastic waste. It doesn't seem to me to have any registration or, you know, I mean, you can order thousands of adult diapers and not have to show any accountability for
Yeah,
how
well, now,
they're
here,
disposed of.
we're getting into that, that's the perfect word, accountability. What do? You know, that's an example of a problem, like,
You
how do we-
institutions, you require institutions to show what the disposal procedure will be.
Yeah, but is it still going to be landfill?
It is landfill, but
Yeah.
should it be landfill, or should that start to be, and is the manufacturing group coming up with any sort of ecological adult diaper?
No, I mean, I've seen it mentioned, I've seen diapers mentioned.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
And they're more and more of the population, younger and older, are going into diapers. And
Yeah.
you think everybody would be giving them up. But your candy bar example, when we were kids, everybody had cloth diapers. So urine and feces was going into the wastewater treatment plants, you know, through your laundry system. And the adult diaper and the children's diaper now is just going straight into the landfill.
You know, interestingly enough, I'll mention this really quickly, the industrial ecology field, which is what Roland Geyer is, I had to take a class in it in graduate school, and one of the things they do is we work on this life cycle analysis, and we're going to see that a little bit when Jen talks about the plastic bag. But we actually were given a case study to read about diapers. Now, this was just children's diapers, and what were the environmental impacts between disposable diapers compared to, I believe it was a laundry service with cloth diapers, not home. And what do you think the results were? I'm just curious to see what people think.
There isn't a lot of savings to having the industrial, you know, group come, because you have travel costs, et cetera, but
I mean, I didn't know that. You know, before I read it, I said, well, of course the cloth diapers are better. But no, it's about measuring environmental
home-managed
impacts.
cloth diapers are better.
Yeah, than doing it at home probably. Yeah,
If you have a
because
service that comes and goes from your home, then it's no longer.
yeah, because when you do a life cycle analysis, you have to count all of the impacts from, you know, technically from extracting the raw materials. So for diapers, disposable diapers, it's the, you know, the plastic lining and the paper or whatever it is that they're made of now. Cloth diapers, if it's hopefully cotton, you have to worry about growing the cotton. All of that has to be counted. And in the end, at that time, that particular study showed that they were pretty much equal.
Well, I would argue they didn't take into account the environmental impact at the end of life cycle.
And that's what it's supposed to count also, a complete life cycle. Yeah. Now, the thing with the plastic waste, and I think you're going to see industry arguing this. I've been on websites. There's one for Canada, the plastics industry of Canada, insisting that plastic bags are better than paper. Well, yeah, if you do the actual calculations, you will come out with them looking better. But what was missing in that analysis that I felt is what we're facing today. They didn't account for it accumulating all over the world. That was not in their analysis, and I don't know how they would do it if they were to redo the analysis. So a lot of this stuff, we have to be careful about what we read. We have to be careful about who's saying what. You know, plastic bags are better than paper or whatever. Yeah, because it depends on what viewpoint you're coming from.
That's three words that CARE has used over the years, is cumulative, accountability, and enforcement.
Oh, those are great.
Those are three, especially cumulative. We've used that for the last 20 plus years. And that's the thing, trying to get people to take into account the cumulative effect.
CIA. No.
It doesn't matter.
I was trying to make something out of it. Make it memorable.
Okay, right, I think, to try to move along here because we're losing time. Okay, I kind of consider this an important slide with the mismanaged plastic waste. What you need to know is that it breaks down in the environment. We saw that in the video clip. And we start out with our plastic bag, let's say, that rolls around. It begins to break down, and that's called a macroplastic. And then it breaks down even more, or a little, the water bottle on the beach, and that term is used, microplastics. These pictures are trying to show how the size changes. And then now they're even worried about a new thing called nanoplastics, which are at the microscopic level that we can't even see. And these are all actual pictures of plastic in different stages. So it's a serious problem. So microplastics and now nanoplastics, those are important terms to kind of keep in mind. You might have heard the term microplastics. It's been in the news a lot, so it's something to become familiar with. That's what it is. It just breaks down. Why does it break down? Because it is exposed on the outside to the weather. This bag is from Lake Michigan. It's rolling around the waves and it broke it down. Sunlight, heat, it could be braided on something, get stuck somewhere, anything on the outside. Also, there's plastic. Microplastics are a problem with the little pellets that we saw in the video clip that the guy kept scooping up with his hands, and he seemed to be having a lot of fun with, also called nurdles. And they, especially when you have somebody doing that, a lot of that stuff escapes the factories, and they are finding those on beaches. Somehow they're dropped maybe during transportation, they end up in the ocean, and they're washing up on beaches. They found them in the Chicago beach. There's, I think, a picture coming up. And even just using our plastic stuff day to day, they think that it's just shedding. It's just actual abrasion and use. You know, dragging this around all the time, throwing it in my bag. You know, we don't know what's going on. It's the physical breakdown of the products that is the big problem here. And that's where the term microplastics comes from. Okay, why are we concerned about the size? Why are we really concerned about microplastics? We have to know how to clean try to figure out how we're going to clean it up or how we're going to target our areas. They move around the world, especially in the oceans. They get there from lakes and rivers into the oceans. It helps us track it. If we didn't know the microplastics were there, the way we know they're there is because we're aware of the size. So the geographical movement, I think I mentioned cleanup efforts, you know, where they came from. I just mentioned the nurdles from the plastic manufacturers. You know, it's one of those things, how did that get there? How did we end up with this? And the last point we're emphasizing, it's always going to come down to, this is the point of the presentation, reducing your consumption. That's you know, what we're really focusing on. It seems to be what the answer is for right now. Okay, I'm just going to skip over since we had an earlier break. Okay. Mentioned land, freshwater, and oceans, or land, oceans, and freshwater. This picture is a picture of microfiber trapped in soil, coming off of synthetic clothing. Lots of this stuff. Look at the magnification of it. Microplastics in soil is a very big problem. And as we have here, actually, they think there are more microplastics on land than there is in the ocean. And all the focus is on the litter in the ocean and the stuff breaking down in the ocean, but they're worried more about the land. Sewage sludge, I don't know if I meant to look that up and I didn't. I don't know if they do spread sewage sludge in this country. Yes,
they do.
Is it legal? I mean,
yep.
Okay. Well, if this stuff is trapped in the soil, it's gotten there, that's just spreading the problem around. So don't always think that it's just the water and the oceans. Again, they're always focusing on the oceans in the news and you know, what you see on TV. You have to think about land and also freshwater communities. So I just kind of was freaked out by that picture. Okay, look at this. Look at this. How many AstroTurf fields do we have in this country? I have no idea. It's been around for a long time. This is artificial fields. Seem to be the preferred way of doing it. This is a picture from the United Nations website. I don't know where in the world it is, probably somewhere in Europe maybe. An AstroTurf field, and then there was a stream nearby, and they found that the material was shedding and ending up in the soil, and that's what the person there was holding in their hand. It's pieces of the plastic from the AstroTurf. A lot of that stuff around, so we got to think about that.
AstroTurf.
Yeah.
Do you know what those little plastic beads do? Because you know how you can have like the plastic grass, like which is the turf, but do you know why they put those plastic black beads on top of the plastic grass?
Oh, I don't know what the structure
Oh,
is.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm just curious to know why they added that on top, because if you can have plastic grass, but I don't understand what's the need for the plastic black beads to go on top of the plastic grass.
I think it's a breakdown of the.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I think that's just what I think.
It's breaking down, and that's why you see that.
Oh,
are you talking about what they're holding in their hand?
Yeah, like
no, that's degraded. The
Oh,
turf is
yeah.
degraded. Yeah, because it's outside and it's exposed to the sunlight and heat. And more than anything, it's the abrasion of people playing on the field. I saw another one I didn't include in the presentation, and it was a picture of a soccer player. I think it was a picture of somewhere in Europe of a competition, and the photographer was able to zoom in close enough. You could see the soccer player kicking his leg, and there was a big cloud of plastic of this stuff.
Yeah.
It was like a slow motion picture.
And they're not healing.
Yeah, and in the old days, I guess that used to be soil and grass, real stuff, and you wouldn't have anything to worry about. But now you see this big stream of plastic particles. So it's, again, with degradation.
And now they're also incorporating, or trying to incorporate also the disaster proof or whatever is covers for landfills. But I'm gonna have to talk to you afterwards because it'll go in stone. No.
You don't even want to put real stuff on it.
No.
Oh.
Let me, I will talk to you after.
Those black pellets are there to stabilize the system and provide cushion.
Okay.
It's not from the...
Degradation?
Right.
Okay, well, I mean, there's still, I think, going to be some degradation
There is,
going on. Yeah.
Those are...
Okay.
Installed.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that.
What
But
are the
nonetheless,
Like little rubber.
Rubber.
And plastic. Any plastic. But they're there to make it like cushion. Because grass is like naturally cushioned.
Yeah,
And the
which
first
brings us-
artificial was like playing on concrete.
yeah,
And
it brings us to
causing a lot of
that,
injuries.
like, the choices that are being made. But yeah, okay, thank you for telling us that.
But it's cheaper too. It's cheaper to go
Yeah,
that
yeah,
route.
no, to
And
maintain
that's what
it.
it comes down to.
Yeah.
Cost.
Here we are, yeah, it always seems to come back to the
Oh, yeah,
plastics.
money.
Okay, your ocean environments. Take a good look at this photo and what you can see. This is a real photo. It's actually, I snagged it from a video clip. A diver, he wrote an article for The Guardian in England, and he actually swam through all of this on the coast of Bali. Again, tourist area, but probably an area that doesn't have very good waste management. It's a very interesting video to watch, and when I was watching it, I thought, oh, I don't know if I'd want to swim through that. I'd be worried about disease and getting sick. I mean, you're looking at the waste there, but it's just loaded. And you can see all kinds of items, see large items, and then a lot of like soupy, it's like a soupy thing, and that's what's characterized in the oceans. They actually literally call it a kind of a soupy mixture because it's all suspended. It's easy to pick up the stuff on the top, but the stuff that's has broken down is getting suspended in the ocean. I don't know. I don't think there's any plan. How can you clean that up? I'll just leave it at that. But that is what's happening, and so it's no wonder that they talk about stuff being in our tap water. So that's the problem with the oceans, and a lot of this has, again, it's already been in the news. Okay, now I'm going to get to some more stuff with the ocean environments. This is another famous picture, effect on wildlife. There's a guy, Chris Jones, I think his name was. Chris Jordan, yeah. If you just Google his name, he did a special photography project on an island. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's where albatrosses, this particular albatross, it's a breeding ground for them. And they're eating plastic because it's washing up. They're mistaking it for food. And this is an actual carcass from an albatross that died because of the effects of the plastic. Just the bulk and everything in the stomach, they end up starving. They can't tell when they should be eating real food or whatever. And when it decayed, there's all the plastic. So, again, that's...
Diane Joe's got a question.
Yeah.
Over here.
Well, sorry.
I was going to mention about the two British scientists that are developing this enzyme that actually eats the plastic.
Yeah, people may be wondering if
And
there's
so
work
they're
going
working
on.
on it, and they're hoping that maybe they can release this enzyme and start eating away the plastics in the oceans.
Yeah, the only thing with that one too, and I think, I know I read something with one of my engineering newsletters, they work on certain plastics. It's like this is the most, one of the water, the polyethylene is one of the most common high volume plastics. And so this is the stuff they're starting with. I look at this poor bird and I'm seeing colored bits of plastic that I have no idea where they came from. I don't know, broken pieces of toys? I don't know. Cap from the bottle? I'm not sure. And now we're getting into different kinds of plastics. So, okay, we're gonna move on. Oh, I had a lot of fun putting this one together. Top 10 items found on beaches globally in 2017. This is international cleanups. This is all tracked. And in 2017, all top 10 spots were taken by plastics and single-use plastics. The cigarette butts, when I first saw that, I thought, cigarette butts? What is this? Plastic? What does that have to do? It's the filters in cigarettes are made out of, I think it's cellulose, but it's still a plastic. And that is a huge problem. And we're not so much talking about the paper of tobacco, it's the filters on there. So this is what it is as of 2017, all top 10 spots. Okay, freshwater environments are Great Lakes. The picture on the right, on my right there, that was taken by, or near the Shedd Aquarium. I assume the Shedd Aquarium took it. That's an actual pile of plastic junk, probably other things that are entangled in it too. That was in Lake Michigan. So we are facing it in the Great Lakes. Littering is a big problem. Throwing it off boats, on the beaches. We already saw the one with the recycling bins and the garbage bins for Memorial Day. Again, what's happening in the ocean is happening in the freshwater. The only difference between the ocean and the freshwater environments, one of those studies that they've been doing, with our Great Lakes, we have a lot of wind action in the lakes, and it tends to break up these piles of garbage. In the ocean, they tend to stick together and float around. And you've probably seen that on the news, gyres or Great Pacific Garbage Patch. In the Great Lakes, it doesn't do that. They tend to be broken up by the wind, or they think this is what's happening. And because of that, it gets blown into shore. And they say that is the reason why they think there's so much. In the case of the Great Lakes, you'll find more of the plastic waste on or near the shore, or close, near, closer in and not as far out. Now, what implications does this have? For us, two things. More wildlife is closer to the shore, so we're worried about effects on wildlife. But for people on Lake Michigan water, the water intake is nearer to the shore. It's not way out. It can't be because you have people who have to go out there and work in those units. And if they're withdrawing the water at that level and more of the waste is there, this is something they're very, very concerned about. So I don't know if that's why it ended up in our tap water, but something to think about. Yes, Virgil?
In Joliet, where I have my experiences, the sewer grates on street level, they're the small sewer grates, and then when they come up into the curb part, there are big holes there for things to go into, and you can put a full-size Coke bottle, Coke can, some of the bigger beer cans and so on and so forth, can go right into the sewer from the street. And then the comical things, it says on the sewer grate, empties into the river.
Wow. Wow.
So a lot of these bottles and stuff that they're showing here, they just go right into the sewer and they're out.
And where does that empty?
Ocean, river, whatever.
Yeah, in my case where I'm living, it's going to go to Lake Michigan because of where our location is. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't have that picture here. But another issue with the waste, especially for Chicago, is and probably other urban areas, is if it doesn't go in, it can accumulate on the intakes or on the grates, and it can block. You can actually accumulate, you put some leaves, wet leaves and everything in there with it. The next thing you know, you're not draining your storm water. So, and this one photographer took a great picture of that. So many multiple problems. It's something. Top 10 items found on Illinois beaches. Same organization, the International Cleanups. It occurs all around the world, I think on the same day, and they have their data broken down just by the United States and by individual states, what people reported in. We did a little better than the whole world. 7 out of the 10 items were plastic, but you can see that a lot of it is kind of in the same order too. There we are with our cigarette butts. I don't know. The filters again are a big problem.
Could you read off the 10?
Yeah, okay, for Illinois. Okay, so now this is freshwater. The other slide was the oceans. This is the freshwater. The first one is cigarette butts. Number 2 are food wrappers. You're going to see that with me, my audit. Plastic bottle caps. Number 4 are straws and plastic coffee stirrers. Number 5 is metal bottle caps, like coming off a beer, I guess. Number 6 is plastic beverage bottles, your water bottles. Number 7 is, cans, soda cans, beverage cans. Number 8 are glass bottles, like beer bottles. 9 is plastic, the grocery bags, plastic grocery bags. And then number 10 is any other kind of plastic packaging, like the thing you see wrapped around the bird's neck, whatever, I don't know what you call it. Yeah, 6-pack rings, yeah. Lots of other things that can be thrown out. Basically anything that's not a plastic grocery bag would go into this category.
Cigarette butts are number 1.
Number 1, both ocean and freshwater systems.
That's probably been that way for as far back as I can remember.
I'm kind of curious because I'm sure that, what is the percentage of the population that smokes? I mean, the percentage that doesn't smoke is probably higher than does smoke, yet look what our number 1 item all over the world is cigarette butts.
It used to be a majority of the population smoked.
Yeah.
That's no more.
Yeah.
So,
It's one of those innocuous things when a person smokes. They have a tendency to think that it's okay to throw the cigarette butt, to put it on the ground, step it out.
Yeah.
It's just like when people have balloon releases, they think that's okay too. They don't think of it as litter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't register the same way as if I took my bottle and threw it out the window of my car. I know I was littering.
So small, and also the fact that, again, I thought that too. I thought, well, it's paper and tobacco leaves, and at first I had no idea why they had it under plastic, and I actually had to look that up. Well, maybe if you're a smoker you would know that, but I didn't. So.
What is the number on the cigarette butt plastic?
The actual amounts, or?
Is it a number, which number of plastic is it?
Oh, to recycle it?
Is it a recyclable?
It's cellulose. Now, cellulose is more of a natural plant-based material, unless in this case it could be synthetic cellulose. I think that's, I don't know.
So it's not really biodegradable?
No. And the fact that it's showing up, and you know what, this was 2017 data. I looked at 2016 data, it was the same. Cigarette butts, always the same. Okay, now we're going to get to some human-related impacts. That picture that you're seeing here is an actual photo. It's come to be a famous photo, I found out. Off the coast of Bali, kind of similar to where they had, in Indonesia, I think it was, but it was close to the same area. The guy surfing, and that's all kinds of garbage, but much of it is plastic. So, again, I don't know if I'd want to surf in that kind of water. I'd be a little concerned about my health. The amount of time that it takes to clean, amount of time and money it takes to clean this stuff up, just keep in mind that it's a big cost burden. Yeah.
Yeah, so, whoops, could you go back to that?
Oh, this one.
Large amount of public money are spent each year to combat litter. I'd like to know where they're spending that money to combat litter.
I think it depends on the communities. On the EPA website, they actually conducted a study. They asked 3 different larger areas. I think it was in on the western cities, and they were curious about what they were spending, and it was millions of dollars. So you're probably talking about urban areas. When we get to smaller communities, maybe not so much. But you know, it's the probably the stuff on the land. You know, we're not a country that likes to see that stuff laying out, and somebody has to clean it up. I've also heard people say, or they say that they've heard other people say when they toss something like littering, it doesn't matter because there are people whose job it is to clean it up. It provides jobs.
Okay.
That's sort of an odd way of looking
If
at it.
if I could, I used to work for the city of Naperville, so downtown, everybody loves to shop downtown Naperville, it's so pretty, right? Every morning at 5 o'clock, there's a crew cleaning up downtown Naperville.
Okay.
365 days a year, there's a crew cleaning up. The reason Joliet doesn't look like Naperville downtown is because they're not spending that money.
Yeah.
So there are cities who do spend a lot of money, and in all those public trash cans, as you were showing the pictures of the overflowing, that's an expense for every city that puts those out. That's an expense to our forest preserve to have those public litter containers. So they would put those costs in that EPA number, saying that they are spending that on litter control.
Yeah, Joliet has the street sweeper, and I think they probably figure that's their responsibility to send out a street sweeper.
And there's two reasons for the street sweeper, you're right, that's one of them, and then there's also, there's legislation that went into effect years ago about non-point pollution. So the waterways getting a lot of the oil from your car, that's on the street. And in order to combat that from going into the storm sewer, you're supposed to do street sweeping and clean that up.
Okay, one last thing I want to mention about the human exposure. There's studies that are going on. One of the things that they are getting concerned about, this seems to be an issue, plastic, the surface of plastic is created in such a way that it has a tendency to kind of be like a magnet, and it can get things glommed onto it. And I believe they found some evidence of this already, but again, research is ongoing. The stuff that's floating around the ocean is probably true for the land too, but particularly in the ocean. If you have there's lots of stuff in the ocean. I'm sure we all know there's lots of chemicals. I don't even want to know. Stuff that's been spilled in there for years and years. What they're concerned about is this stuff actually glomming onto the plastic waste. And then if fish eat it, and it has effects on the fish. If we end up eating the fish, that's the kind of thing that they're studying now. We don't know whether some of these things that are in the environment are sticking to the plastic and then eventually we'll end up ingesting them. Just to kind of throw that out there that this is research that's going on. Okay, one last thing I want to mention is the microfibers. We saw fiber in the soil, and this is a huge problem. Synthetic textiles, there's been a huge rise in the use of synthetic textiles. They shed when we wash on our washing machine. Most people don't have anything in their washing machine to capture it. We have lint traps that go up in our dryer, but not with the washing machine. And this stuff goes through to the wastewater treatment plant, like in the case like where I live, we're on Lake Michigan water. Wastewater treatment plants were never designed for this, and so it's not trapped and it's going out into the lake. Cycles back around, possibly, and that is in your drinking water. Maybe they took that same water and the fibers are huge problem. Patagonia, that makes a lot of these garments, is studying this because they sell so much of it. If something isn't done to fix this, they will probably be out of business. So just think about the next time you get a synthetic piece of clothing, which I think what I'm wearing is synthetic. Looking through some pictures. That's from Patagonia's website. They're microscopic level. I mean, sometimes you can see them if it gloms together in a clump, but this is what they're studying under microscopically. How you can help. Best thing is to be able to put a filter off of the hose from your washing machine, but that can be expensive, and that this can be a big investment. There are some other things on the market. Coral ball. I'm going to pass this around. Coral ball is modeled after a piece of coral. It's got these little things, and it's supposed to pick up pieces of fiber from your washing machine, just throw it in your washing machine, and it will stick to these, and then you have to take the time to pick the stuff out, but if you can pick it out and throw it in the trash, it's better than it going out in the water. I'm going to pass this around so you can see what that looks like. Not too expensive, it's about $30. And studies have come out saying that it is helping a bit, like I think it's a 26% removal. I know it's not great, it's not as good as a permanent filter, but it's something, we're making an effort. Another thing is a guppy bag that has a special lining inside that traps the fibers, and again, you can physically remove them. So it's just some things that you might want to think about. Mostly, that think the next time we're all buying synthetic clothing, that this is occurring in the wash. People heard about the microbeads, and all I want to say about that is they used to be in cosmetics. I say used to be in this country because in 2015, President Obama signed a law banning them. They cannot be in facial scrubs or toothpaste or anything like that, and in 2017, manufacturers had to stop selling it. However, whatever is in the Great Lakes or in the oceans is there, and again, how we're going to fix that, I don't know. So you don't have to worry about, in this country, again, buying it, but other countries have not outlawed it, and it's going to be a problem worldwide. But that's the idea. Look how small they are on the fingertip. Another brilliant idea of Johnson & Johnson, who they mentioned, Johnson & Johnson and somebody else. You know, they can go ahead and do these things, and they're not responsible for the ramifications down the line until this kind of damage has occurred. Okay, we're going to go on. Just okay, this is just a repeat of what we saw before. We said 9% recycling. Oh, Joe, come on. This is your part.